If you're a regular here on the channel, you know that I absolutely love flying with ATC within Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and now 2024. But what about those who haven't dived into it yet? You got the basics of flying down, but what about talking to ATC? Is it too early, too complex? Let's dive in. Common myths or fear. So, a lot of people say that you have to emphasize that ATC is a skill you have to master and that there's a final exam that you have to pass the exam to get into ATC. Well, I'll tell you what, that is not true. That is not true with today's technology. It is not true at all. There are a ton of amazing tools that can help you get better and more proficient when it comes to ATC within flight simming. And one thing is to understand you don't need to be perfect before you start using ATC. You do not. And another myth is that you'll be embarrassed if you do VATSIM. If you say the wrong call sign, if you don't understand the clearance, if you don't understand the instructions properly, that you're going to look like a goof and everyone's going to make fun of you and you're going to be kicked off of, whatever network you're on. And the other myth is that it's only for airliners and it's only for the pros. And again, none of this is true. You don't have to be a pro. You don't have to just do airliners. You will not be scarred for life joining VATSIM and making a mistake. And you don't need to be perfect because no one is perfect in this world. You just need to be able to have fun. So when we're going to go through these steps here, there's a couple of very important things you need to understand so that you can, make the experience the best you possibly can make it. And first off is, here are the signs that you're ready to try ATC. So you can complete a gate-to-gate flight on your own. And you need to be able to understand the basic aircraft controls and navigation. You followed your checklist, or you use SimBrief and understand what SimBrief is, and you're curious about realism and immersion, and those things will help guide you into ATC for Microsoft Flight Sim. And here's the thing. If you're super confident in a plane, for example, me, I'm pretty confident in the Phoenix 319 or 320. I'm a very confident person in those planes. I feel like if someone were to tell me, can you do this? I would be like, yeah, I can do that. Now, there are definitely some things I cannot do on that plane. There are certainly things I cannot do on that plane. I've watched many other simmers out there, and I look at them like, how did you do that? I didn't know that was even possible. I'll be honest, I don't even know how to do a hold properly within the Phoenix. But as I've watched of these other simmers, I've gotten that knowledge. So if you're ever thinking that you're the best you possibly can be on that plane, go watch another simmer. Go watch another content creator out there. And you're probably going to learn a couple tricks when it comes to that plane. And a lot of the content creators out there, what's really cool is that they do kind of narrow themselves into using a handful of planes. There are some content creators that do use a massive amount of different planes, GA to airliners, but a lot of them kind of stick to the same thing. For example, I'm going to use one as an example, which is 757 Spy. He's one of my favorite to watch. I absolutely love his channel. He's up on Twitch. He's also on YouTube. And he likes to stick to the airliners. Occasionally, he'll jump into a GA flight for like a group flight, but he primarily sticks to the airliners, and he has a wealth of knowledge within a lot of those airliners. And I've learned so much information from him. And then there are other creators out there who will stick primarily to GA aircrafts, and they fly just a handful of different GA aircrafts. And there are some who fly only one GA aircraft. So figure out what you feel like you have mastered or think you have mastered it, and maybe look up on YouTube to see if you can learn any additional tricks to get better or learn something new about that plane before you jump into ATC. What type of ATC should you start with? This is a very subjective question, and I feel, in my personal opinion, that using an AI ATC is probably going to be the best way to go. And you can certainly use the built-in ATC that comes with Flight Sim 2020 or Flight Sim 2024. They're a good structure, but they're very limited in their capacity. One is you can't talk to it, right? There is no force readback. There is some weird kind of things it does, but to get you kind of going in the right direction, it's there. What I do recommend, though, is jumping over to one of the paid ones. And now these are only available on PC, unfortunately. So you Xbox users, I do apologize, but these two are only available on PC. And it is BeyondATC and FSHud. You've probably heard me mention this many times if you've been on this channel. Both of them are one-time purchases. Both of them offer an amazing experience within flight simming that just takes you to a whole new level. I've learned so much information from using AI ATC, FSHud, and BeyondATC. I've learned how to use proper phraseology. I've learned how to understand different airports. Now, there are always going to be issues when you're using anything with AI. It may not see you where you are properly. It may not know a taxiway properly. It may not have the weather correct. But they're tools to help you learn and get better. And let's say you were going to get real world training when it comes to become a pilot. These tools can help you get there a little bit faster. Now, these aren't perfect, and they will be different than the real world, of course, but they're tools to help you learn additional stuff. So then when you're done with BeyondATC, FSHud, and you feel confident in those, and maybe you're getting bored with those, you can certainly jump over to VATSIM, which is live human controllers. So the tip with this is start with low traffic airports, fly VFR or something with an IFR simple leg. Very basic stuff. You can also depart from one airport to another that has no tower whatsoever, and just use Unicom for all of it. At least now you're doing your call signs, you're doing all that jazz, you're giving the instructions, and then when you're ready, you can go from one airport that might have, let's say center or ground, to an airport that doesn't. And then when you're feeling more confident, you can jump to the next step. When to know you're not ready for ATC is if you're still struggling with basic takeoff and landings. And I know as simmers, we are going to always struggle in this area because having the feel of the real life physics in a plane is a lot different than a simulation where you can't really feel it. And there are tools to kind of help us with force feedback and rumbling chairs and all that jazz. But unless you're in the real cockpit, it is kind of hard to have consistent landings in a sim. So what I mean by this is if you're really struggling, if you're having really hard bounces a lot, if you're pulling up too much on the stick, those are signs you might not be ready for ATC because you still got to practice on those planes. If you're not comfortable with the radios and avionics, this is super important. If you don't know how to navigate properly, if you don't know how to file a flight plan, if you don't know how to go direct, if you don't understand how the GPS system works, in the G1000, well, you might not be ready yet for ATC. And the next is if you easily get overwhelmed, there is no shame in waiting. There absolutely is no shame in waiting. And I encourage you to take baby steps when it comes to jumping on ATC, whether it's the AI ATC or if it is VATSIM. And first time tips for y'all. So there is a video on the channel here that kind of gives you the how to talk to ATC steps. And I do recommend you check it out if you're interested. It is using BeyondATC, but in there I do also have a cheat sheet that you can use. I do recommend having that. It's good for phraseologies and what phrase or which words you should use at what time in the flight. And then do short regional hops before you do a full IFR legs. For me personally, I love doing short regional hops, period. But it also makes the flight a lot more engaging because I'm also always communicating in some form or fashion, it seems like, with ATC. And then, of course, watch YouTube examples or use ATC trainers like BeyondATC in practice modes. And what I mean by that is just start up at an airport, sit there, and do your call. And then close it out and do it again. And then close it out and do it again, right? So this way you're getting practice with that. This is Delta 123. We're at gate blah, 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 looking to pick up our IFR to this location. Complete all of the initial clearance calls close it out, and do it again. Because I feel like the clearance part and, of course, the arrival part are the most two difficult things you can do when it comes to ATC. Thanks for watching this video. Give me some comments down below of any tips and tricks you have when you first got started in ATC, or what's maybe holding you back from jumping into ATC. We'll see you next time. Take care.